We are live. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, everyone, and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Happy holidays. I can't believe they already came. They're already over. It went by so quickly.
Yeah, well, you had a great little getaway vacation, right?
I did. This year, my mom, my sister, who live in Minnesota, who have to
Uh-huh.
deal with the cold. Right now, it's like -10 and snowing. They
Yeah,
want to go somewhere warm. So we met in Mexico for the week.
it's a good idea.
I mean, it was, the weather wasn't too far off from California, but it was nice to get away, sit by the beach, relax a little bit, and spend time with family. So I really,
Yeah.
really enjoyed it.
Yeah, we always try to make a goal to leave here around wintertime to go somewhere tropical just to get some sun and get away. And the allergies here around Texas, especially in Austin, like the cedar fever is really bad. So Brenda gets these terrible reactions going on all the time. So it's so important to get away for us. But we haven't done that yet this year, really. So we need to do it.
Do you have any place in mind?
Well, we went to Colorado, but that's not
Sure.
warm. So I think we might find a little way to get to Costa Rica or something just to get away. Yeah.
Well, that sounds
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah. So pretty cool stuff. You got any New Year's goals? Any resolutions?
Just to make sure I stay on it, make myself more accountable. I want to be more organized. So making more lists. That's pretty much it right now. I want to definitely stick to the way I'm eating, exercising. I do, 5 days a week at least at the gym. So I want to make sure I stick with that because it's so easy. It's hard to get started, but once you get started, it's easy to continue, but it's easy to fall off track again. So I want to make sure I stick to that and keep that going. Like that.
Yeah. Well, I think that's it right there. Is just being consistent. Like that's the key to anything, whether it's nutrition principles we talk about, or movement, or just being a nice person. Like just be consistently doing it over and over again, and then you're rewiring your nervous system, and the habits become ingrained in you, and then it's now just part of your life. It's the way it is.
Yes.
So that's one thing I want to advise people on early in the year. These big New Year's mistakes I see people making year after year. It's they try to do way too much way too soon. They're going from a place of eating a really poor diet or not moving at all, and they're like, well, I'm going to go run a marathon, or I'm going to start counting my calories and restrict everything. I'm going to take all away my favorite foods, and I'm going to go real hard, and it lasts like 3 days.
Yep.
And it's done. And then they go back to doing it, and it's like same New Year's things happen every year. So I mean, I really want to stress that principle of success is consistency and just making achievable and obtainable goals, and then getting a small win and then doing it, getting a little momentum, and then you kind of increase the load, increase the weight, or do something a little more, but just be consistent. That way you can get momentum. That's the key to anything.
But what are your goals for 2019?
Oh gosh. They're more so values rather than anything else. I don't have like specific goals. So like for instance, like health is a big value that I want to go further into expressing this year. I've always like fitness and movement has always been like my thing, like my zone of genius. And like this year I want to start going deeper with that and sharing more of it. Like I've created a lot of programs, but I want to do more on just social media. Like I'm putting up these workouts where they're nice and easy for everyone to do. It's kind of like what I'm talking about. Like just start there, get some momentum. And these are things like very minimal equipment, like dumbbells and bands, maybe a box to step up on, but just doing things consistent. So I want to start expressing that and teaching that more. Travel's a big one. We love traveling, so we want to go some cool places. Actually, in the States, like we want to go to like Northern California and maybe go to Alaska and just like the Northeast. I think that would be cool in the fall. And music. I mean, I'm so in love with music these days. Like I've been playing a lot of guitar, and those lessons that I'm talking about, they really are applicable in anything you learn, but especially guitar. So I don't want to learn how to play the most difficult song in the world early on. Like you want to find something that you can easily play, and make it sound good right away. Even if it's simple, that's okay, because I'll get that down and then I'll build on it a little bit. Maybe add a little hammer on, hammer off. Maybe do a chord up the neck. But the same thing. And I just love music. There's something about it when I'm playing. My mind is not thinking anymore. It's not like what's going on, what do I have to do for work, or what's for dinner. It's like it's in the music, and something amazing happens. It's like a meditation. I love it so much, and I fall in love with it more and more every time I play. So yeah, music, travel, health, connection, community. Like we have wonderful friends, and I'm so grateful for them. So yeah.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
And videos that you're putting out, like the last few days, I've been doing them every morning. They're a great way to
Ah,
stay. So thank you.
yeah. Oh, you're welcome. They're good, huh? Because they get the whole body going,
They
right?
do.
And I'm big on like planks and crawls and things like that, and variations of planks and crawls, because it's like every muscle in your body is working,
Right.
right? It's like, when we go to the gym, we see someone get on a machine, they're like doing this thing with the bicep, right? You could point to them and you're like, point to the muscle that's working, and it's
Right.
like it's just here. It's just here. And then they get off that machine and they go to the next machine. They do this machine. It worked this one, you
Yep.
know? And so we've been trained to work out in isolation, but the body doesn't move like that, you know? So when we're always training muscles in isolation, our brain sort of forgets how to move. And that's one of the real issues, is that people don't move very well. I mean, literally, they don't stand very well. They don't pick things up very well. They don't push, pull very well. They don't get up from a chair very well. And this leads to pain and imbalances. So, one of the simple things you can do is go back to like functional movement and crawling and squatting and pushing and pulling and pick things up. If I point to you there and I'm like, what muscles are working? You're like, oh gosh, all of them.
Exactly.
All of them are working, and then you're able to get a lot of work done in a very short period of time. Most of these workouts that I'm sharing, you can do in like 10 to 15 minutes. You know what I mean? And then you can do another workout after that if you wanted to, but like just at least give yourself 15 minutes,
Yeah.
and that's all you got to do. And just get some momentum, and you'll start feeling more toned and lean and like just more stable. You'll start noticing yourself moving better, so yeah, I'm excited about it.
One of my favorite moves is the plank, because it does work so much of your body. Like,
Hmm.
that is definitely one of my favorites. So when I saw you incorporate that, I'm like, yes, it's one of
Yeah.
one of my
Uh,
favorites.
all kinds of planks, all kinds of planks. And so the key on the plank for everyone listening is really engage your body, right? Don't just like be loose in the plank. Like squeeze your butt as hard as you can, lock your knees straight, pull your kneecaps up, squeeze your stomach as hard as you can, pull your elbows towards your feet, and you'll be shaking because you're getting all those muscles engaged. And that's what we're really going for, is engagement of those muscles,
Right.
good position, and then it's like, wow, you've turned the brain on. You know what I mean? So it's great. Doesn't hurt your joints at all.
And you can feel it working everything from your shoulders to your core.
Yeah.
Goodness.
Yeah. So awesome. We'll do more on exercise and fitness, because I love that stuff. But yeah, I'm looking forward to that, because I feel like in my own evolution, I was really big into that early on in my career. Like when I got into Native Path and our Paleo Secret and everything we're doing here, and then we got more into nutrition. And now I'm kind of like, oh well, I'm still gonna teach nutrition, but I really want people to break into movement,
Right.
And for me personally, I just love sharing it, so I'm excited.
I'm excited too, because I think that's a complete package of a lifestyle. It's health,
Yeah,
nutrition, and movement as well, which is very crucial.
yeah. When you combine the two, you start feeling good. When you feel good, it's like everything else in life gets better. Like people are nicer, like you're more creative at your work. It's like everything is better. So yeah, we just want people to feel well. So yeah, well, let's get into today's topic.
Yes.
So it's 2019, new year, and yeah, like every time, like I mentioned, people are like, what diet is in this year? What's going on? What's the thing to do? And this year it is the ketogenic diet. Everyone's talking about the ketogenic diet. It's like the number one thing that everybody's trying. So that's good, because there's a lot of great things about the ketogenic diet. It can be extremely helpful for weight loss, and it's great for cognition, longevity. You can reduce a lot of inflammation, but it can also be jacked up. And I'm seeing a lot of people out there marketing the ketogenic diet, and they're missing the point on some basic principles around nutrition and health. So I want to review those. We're going to talk about what the ketogenic diet is, the history of it. I can cover the benefits of it. I'll also talk about how it differs a little bit from paleo and maybe Atkins, because that they kind of get confused a little bit. And then we'll go into what to eat, what not to eat, and kind of how to measure things a little bit. I'm not a big fan of measuring food and weighing your food. So I'm going to tell people to not do that. But for people who do want to know how to do that, I'm going to also tell you the basic ways to do that. And then we'll kind of break it down, and how to know when you're in ketosis, and is it safe, and cover the big takeaways. So
Awesome.
does that sound exciting? Yeah. So
something new. So it's 2019. So it's very exciting. Let's learn about it.
yeah. Let's cover the ketogenic diet. So so what is it, right? So we kind of talked about this before, but it is a high fat, moderate protein, low carbohydrate diet. And the general, we're talking about calories there, like percentage of where you get your calories, and to just kind of cover things, like fats are your oils, your nuts, your seeds, like avocados, olives, um, you know, coconut oil, olive oil, the kind of the big ones. But they could be like the toxic oils, right? So like safflower oil, sunflower oil, vegetable oils, and things like that. Your proteins, you can have animal-based proteins like beef, chicken, eggs, bison, bacon, pork, chicken, those things. You could also have vegetable-based proteins like soy and lentils and beans and things like that. And then you can have your carbohydrates. They could be candy, refined processed foods, packaged foods, liquid carbohydrates like sodas, or they could be, fries. Or they could be fruits or starches like potatoes or vegetables. A lot of people forget that carbohydrates are vegetables,
Right.
So we want to be clear on that. But we're talking about here is the percentage of calories coming from each one. So it's a general guideline for the ketogenic diet is about 75% fat, 20% protein, 5% carbohydrate. And that can vary from person to person because some people could get into ketosis with like maybe 65%, fat and maybe 25% protein and 10% carbohydrates. And some people may have to go up to like 80% fat and 15% protein, 5% carbohydrates. It's different for everybody because they're all coming from a different place, and really the only true way to tell is to do a keto test on yourself through like urine or pricking your finger, which I'm not a big fan of people doing because I know who we're talking to, people that are coming from a standard American diet. But I just want people to know that that's an option out there. So in general, just think high fat, moderate protein, low carbohydrate diet, and we'll talk about what that looks like. And that principle there, that high fat, moderate protein, low carbohydrate diet is something that humans have been doing for a long time. And it became really popular at the beginning of the 19th or the 20th century. Some doctors started finding out that the ketogenic diet was extremely effective for their patients that were dealing with epilepsy, these neurological disorders. So they found that if they put the patients on a ketogenic diet, that they had a radical reduction in epileptic seizures. And especially in a lot of these children. And it kind of makes sense when you think about it because the nervous system and the brain is all fat. That's what it's made up of, right? So when we're fueling the body with fat and it starts absorbing all that fat into the tissue, things started to suddenly get better. So it got really, really interesting for a lot of people there. But at that time, America wasn't really too overweight. We weren't having problems, so there wasn't really a diet thing going on. But come around to the 70s, and then this thing called Atkins comes in, right? And he basically took those same principles and found that it was effective for weight loss, The issue with Atkins, though, was there was no appreciation whatsoever on food quality, right? So you could be eating, like what I was saying, the toxic vegetable oils and, really harmful proteins. Lots of dairy, for instance, is in the Atkins diet, which can be very inflammatory to people, especially in their gut, So you could be eating a lot of problematic foods, but still do the Atkins thing and then maybe get into ketosis and get weight loss, but you could still be dealing with some health issues, So the Atkins is pretty much going for that ketogenic diet percentage, right? That's high fat, moderate protein, low carb, but not necessarily paying attention to carbohydrates. What paleo is a strong appreciation for food quality, but not necessarily paying attention to macronutrient ratios. Remember, macronutrients are the proteins, carbs, and fats. So what you could say what paleo is paying attention to is the micronutrients, the amount of nutrition that's actually within the food, right? And what I'm seeing with the ketogenic diet these days online is that a lot of people are kind of doing the Atkins thing, right? And they're doing like keto fat bombs and everything, and they're doing it in such a way that they're not paying attention to the micronutrients, the nutrition. And we don't want to lose that. We don't want to all of a sudden like forget about vegetables, because they're really, really good. And there's lots of great vitamins and minerals in there that are going to help you feel amazing, right? So it's good to have those things in there and appreciate food quality. So, I want to say all that because I want people to understand there's a best case scenario here where you are doing a whole nutrient dense diet and you're taking that ketogenic, and you could also call it a low carb paleo approach, where you're focusing on quality fats, moderate protein, and good quality vegetables, right? And a little bit of fruit, and maybe just a little bit of starch, right? That can be extremely effective for someone coming from the standard American diet, who's eating a highly refined carbohydrate-rich diet that's high in toxins, and they're dependent on glucose as a fuel source, right? So they're putting in lots of sugar in their body in order to get energy. And what's happening when we're giving you that kind of low carb ketogenic whole food diet, we're putting good energy in your body. We're putting lots of good fats. And what's happening is your body will stop using glucose as fuel, and it'll start using fat as fuel. And when you do that, you enter the state of ketosis, right? When you're using ketones as fuel. And the big benefit, in my mind, the big benefit of the ketogenic diet, or the intention, really should be to get you to be what's called metabolically flexible, right? Metabolic efficiency, where you're able to use ketones as fuel, and you're able to use glucose as fuel, depending on the task at hand. I don't think it's good to just use glucose, and I also don't think it's good to just use ketones, right? Because it's a balance. It's a yin yang kind of thing, so it's important to kind of have both of those. All that makes sense? Is that a good intro? How you feeling on that?
No, it definitely makes sense, because a lot of things with Atkins is people found that you use a lot of supplements, like you use a lot of meal replacements, like bars and shakes. So it's really good to narrow it down to keeping it simple and eating good quality food sources. So
right.
The thing that people always thought of with Atkins is you see Atkins bars, Atkins supplements. Yes. So it's really good to narrow it down. So that makes sense.
Yeah, and we're seeing a lot of the same thing with keto. I go to the store and I'll see like keto bars and keto meal replacements and things like that, and it's just concerning, because we're moving away from whole real food. So like, at Native Path, that's what our intention is, to get back to a native diet here, that what humans were designed to eat. I think I told you I did a video the other day about Maya, and when Maya, for those who don't know, Maya's our little cute golden doodle dog, right? And when we picked her up, the lady caring for her litter was really adamant. She was like, Maya really only needs to eat real, raw, whole dog food. It's really important. I've been feeding that to her whole life, and when you take her home, I highly recommend you keep doing it. And she was telling us all about the dog food industry and how there's lots of chemicals and toxins and ingredients and sugar and grains in dog food. And she's like, dogs are not meant to eat dog food. Yeah. And that toxic dog food, that's what's getting them sick. That's what's hurting their joints and giving them cancers and things like that. Yeah. But the interesting thing is that when she went back to her car, I noticed she got out and she had soda and she had a chips and she was eating refined and processed food, and I could tell she was in pain. I could tell she was in a lot of pain. She was walking when her joints were hurting, and I could see that she was having health issues and stuff like that. And it just really gave me a moment of reflection. Like we can see that that's an animal, and that animal needs real food, but like we fail to make that connection that it's also the case with humans. Right. So when we're doing these keto things and we're like, there's a keto bar, we're thinking we can somehow hack it, right? It's like, no, it's real food, just real food, and make it simple, and you'll get the results, and you can make it taste great and all that stuff. But it was just a good reflection point for both Brenda and I, that like people forget like what we're supposed to eat and what we're supposed to do. And when I was a physical therapist going into the homes, I would see nothing but refined and processed foods with people dealing with health issues, so super important. So no matter what you do, whether it's keto or paleo or whatever, just eat whole real food first and foremost. That's the most important thing. So, but yeah, the benefits of Atkins, I mentioned this earlier, but like, weight loss is probably the greatest one. It's super effective. Once you stop reducing the intake of refined carbohydrates, you improve your insulin sensitivity, and you start burning fat as fuel, and it's super duper effective. It's great for energy. I will say there's probably a good 3 to 5 day period. It's kind of the same thing that people experience in the 30-day challenge, because the big secret is we're kind of putting people towards a low carb paleo diet, almost ketogenic diet in the paleo challenge, right? And that's why we tell people be prepared for the first 3 to 5 days, because you might have this low carb kind of flu when you're transitioning from being a sugar burner to a fat burner, But it's also great for neurological and brain disorders. If anyone wants to minimize or decrease their risk of Alzheimer's or dementia, you know, those are really tough things to be around if people have had that in their family. So it's very important to really get good fats in your diet, and also good for decreasing your risk for metabolic disorders. So metabolic syndrome is not only obesity, but high blood pressure, heart disease, high triglycerides, you know, even cancers are kind of thrown into that metabolic syndrome. So it's going to be beneficial for reducing your risk and maybe even treating all of those. And I mentioned cancer, but there's an incredible amount of research on the ketogenic diet and the benefits towards cancer. And I won't go too much into that, but I will say if you want a good resource, check out a guy named Dom D'Agostino. He's great. He's done a lot of research there. If anybody's dealing with that in their lives or a family member, you know, I highly recommend you look up Dom D'Agostino and ketogenic diet and cancer. And he's got some great research there for you. But yeah, I really believe a lot of that comes back to getting rid of refined carbohydrates and improve your metabolic flexibility. And I think when you do that, the immune system radically starts to improve. So I talked a little bit about the difference between paleo and keto. Main issue here is that paleo diet is macronutrient agnostic, right? And it's micronutrient specific, right? So it's focusing on food quality. So paleo diet, you could be eating, you know, moderate fat, moderate protein, moderate carbohydrates. You could be eating low carb or high carb. You could be eating high fat or low fat. Doesn't matter. It's just eating this, not that, right? It's eating. Paleo is meat, vegetables, nuts, seeds, some fruit, little starch, no sugar. Just real simple. And then keto diet is more focused on the macronutrients, right? So that's high fat, moderate protein, low carbohydrate. You could still be eating grains if you're eating just a little bit. You could still be eating dairy if you're eating just a little bit, right? But what we're advising people to do is to not eat grains or dairy and just eliminate those because they're highly problematic for most people, and focus on food quality and still do it within the ketogenic framework. And then that'll really give you like the double results that you're looking for.
Really quickly, when you talk about the flu, is we actually get a lot of questions about that. What are ways to help or minimize the keto flu?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'd say the first thing is to keep drinking water. Yeah. You know, a lot of the times that the water will fix the headaches, will fix the energy lows. I would also, and I say this a lot, but put some salt in your water. You know, that way you get some electrolytes. And as I'm mentioning that, I'm reminded that when you're doing a ketogenic diet, it's incredibly important that you're getting enough electrolytes in your diet. So like constantly putting salt in your water. I put salt in my, I make tea in the morning. You know, I've been doing a lot of that with, I've been doing this mushroom tea where I put ghee in there and a little bit of cacao and a little bit of salt. And it's amazing. So that's another way to do it, but just consistently putting salt in your water and drinking lots of water. And I would say also keep going back to protein and fat, like really satiating things. You know, things that like if you'll get full if you keep eating it. You'll get full if you keep eating chicken. You'll get full if you keep eating eggs. You'll get full if you keep eating coconut oil or olive oil because they're so satiating. It's what actually prevents you from overeating. And we find that those really help sugar cravings, but also like that low carb flu thing. And I would say keep moving, you know, keep moving, get to go walking, unplugged in nature. Those really simple things can help you out a lot. So real big three things there.
We one more question pop up.
Sure.
So if I have a metabolic syndrome, would it be helpful to switch from paleo? Rested several weeks ago.
Well, so what I would say if you're still dealing with symptoms with metabolic syndrome is to, lower the carbohydrates and increase the fat and see how you do. You know what I mean? And when I say increase the fat, what I mean there is probably incorporating more snacks that are fat-based, like avocados and oils, olives, and maybe like a handful of nuts and seeds, and being a little more liberal with, say, like ghee or grass-fed butter or coconut oil on the things you cook with, like whether you're doing your vegetables and your meats. And then I would say lower the carbohydrates to just like vegetables, you know, like broccoli, cauliflower, spinach, things like that. And then just touch on fruit, like in the berries and raspberries and strawberries and things like that, but stick to mostly berries and maybe stay away from the starches altogether. So like no sweet potatoes. And I would say do that for like maybe 15 to 20 days and see what happens to your symptoms. your metabolic symptoms, like specifically your blood pressure and your triglycerides. If you see improvements in those, I would say stay there for a couple more weeks, and then you can probably incorporate a few more. You can kind of go more into that carbohydrate realm where you're having more starches and more fruits, but it's always good to start on the lower side, really ramp up the fats a little bit so you're still satiated, you're getting good energy, and then you can kind of wean into more carbohydrates. But yeah, that's a great question. But yeah, what we're talking about, what's the difference between this? Is kind of what's the difference? Well, you're still doing paleo, you're just now doing also keto, But we just don't want you to do the kind of conventional keto approach, the Atkins keto approach, which is what we want to avoid. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah. So then comes the trick of like measuring all the food, right? And this is where it's really good for type A people, like my mom would be type A, she's got a little OCD going on, and which is good, but she would want to I need to calculate everything and do this and that and this and this, make sure I'm exactly the right thing. And I don't recommend that.
Yeah.
But what you want to do is kind of, if you're going to count anything, you would count carbohydrates and fat and protein. And what you're looking for is the percentage of calories coming from each one. Remember, it's like 75%, 20%, 5%. And for most people, that comes out to maybe no more than 20 to 50 grams a day of carbohydrates per person, right? And that's not a lot. But that could be like one sweet potato, right? That's how many carbohydrates that is. But that could be like 12 cups of broccoli, So we don't want to get people confused to say, like, when you're looking at your plate, your plate really should still be full of vegetables.
Right.
Make sure it's full of vegetables. Those are all carbohydrates. And you could say, look at all the carbohydrates I'm eating. But the difference is those carbohydrates aren't very dense in carbohydrates, right? But if I have like a cookie, like half a cookie, it might have 50 grams of carbohydrates. But I could have 12 cups of broccoli, and it's only got 30. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. Right. So this is where people will be like, I can't have my carbs. You can have your carbs. You can have your carbs. They're called vegetables. You know what I mean? Right? So right. So that's the thing. So let me refer people to a couple good resources who are a little more OCD and want to measure and weigh their food. So there's a great website called Keto Gains, and you can Google Keto Gains Calculator, right? And you can go to that site and you can enter in your weight, your body mass index, your body fat percentage. You can put in your goals, how active you are, what you're doing, and it'll tell you what your goals are. You can put in what your goals are if it's like fat, weight gain, weight loss, whatever. It'll tell you exactly how many calories you should be eating per day, and it'll break it down into how much calories of protein you should be eating, how much calories of carbohydrate you should be eating, how much calorie of fat you should be eating. So we'll post that below here, but that's Keto Gains Calculator, right? And then what you want to do is start tracking your food, and you would go to a place called Chronometer, where you put in how many grams of each food you've eaten that day. So if you've eaten like 10 grams of chicken, you put that in. If you eat an avocado, you put that in. If you eaten 12 almonds, you put that in. If you eat a tablespoon of coconut oil, you put that in. And it'll tell you what percentage you're in, And on that Chronometer place, you can put in what Keto Gains tells you. Like if it tells you to eat this percentage of protein, this percentage of fat, this percentage of carbohydrates, you put that into Chronometer, and then once you log your food, it'll tell you like, oh, you're above on protein, or you're below on protein, or you're above on carbohydrates, or that. Again, this is something that I think is helpful if people are OCD, but it's a little bit too much work for me to kind of recommend most people do it. But I want to put that out there in case people want to know, right? Yeah, because I just think the principle, if you just stick to this principle, like early on, right? And it's the same principle we talk about in the 30-day challenge, which is why we feel comfortable meshing these two groups, the keto groups and the paleo groups. If you just stick to a palm-sized portion of protein, lots of veggies, and good quality fats, like what coconut oil, ghee, avocado, grass-fed butter, maybe a handful of nuts, maybe some olives, maybe an avocado or here or there, again, you'll thrive.
Yes.
Like you will absolutely thrive if you and you will improve metabolic flexibility. You will improve your ability to burn fat as fuel, right? You will eventually get into ketosis, right? And that's what we're really going for, is the ability to burn fat and carbohydrates as fuel, right? But again, if you're super anal, check out Chronometer, check out ketosis. You'll get there. Some people are, and that's okay.
No, which is good because it discourages a lot of people because a lot of people don't want to sit there counting everything they eat. So it's good to know you have two options. You know,
Yeah,
so with people that want to actually check it, they can go to that website and then actually log everything. So that's
right.
what, you know.
Yeah, and if you are going to do that, I wouldn't recommend doing it for any more than 2 weeks. And
Right.
that way you can just get familiar, like with how much carbohydrates I'm eating or how much calories am I eating here, you know? Um, the people who I like again, people who I find that are successful doing that are like the real scientific engineering type people, you know? Um, but that's not, to me personally, that's not fun. You know,
Right.
I like to go out and eat freely and just like let satiety do its thing and just know that if I eat the right foods and kind of approach the right principles, I still get in fantastic shape. I'm 40 years old and I feel amazing, you know. But I've never counted calories. I don't like it. It's just too much. And that's another thing when I'm seeing people do the ketogenic diet, I'm also seeing a lot of engineering type people that are teaching it, and
Right.
they're telling people this is what they have to do, and they have to test their blood urine, and they have to test their ketone levels. I mean, so we got people coming from eating pizza and Coke to like pricking their finger, and weighing and measuring their food, and going back to like the New Year's thing. This is where people are like,
Yeah.
I can't do this.
Right.
You know, I can't do this. So what I'm saying is, well,
Yeah.
don't just eat like what we're saying here. Eat quality protein, lots of vegetables, good quality fats, and you'll thrive, right? You'll
Wonderful.
thrive.
Love it.
Yeah. So like what to eat, you know, we talked about quality fat sources, but those are things like grass-fed butter, coconut oil, MCT oil, olives, avocados. Olives and avocados and like a handful of nuts and seeds, especially macadamia nuts are my favorite. Those are like the best snacks for keto, I'm finding, like for sure. Probably my favorite snack is to take an avocado, put some lemon juice on there and a little bit of salt and just mash it up. And it's wonderful, you
Yes.
know? And then olives are great to snack on. So things like that would be much better than like say chips, right?
Yeah. Totally.
Um, Flaxseed oil, you know, I mentioned raw nuts. You really want to be careful with like nut butters. Like
Mhm.
we talked about how those are really dense in calories, but they can get people in trouble. But those are okay to eat. Just be real careful. And the things you want to avoid, same thing like paleo. You want to avoid the trans fats, the deep fried foods. You want to avoid partially hydrogenated oils, margarine, vegetable oils, corn oil. So soybean oil, safflower oil, canola oil, cottonseed oil. Those are all not good things to eat. Good quality protein sources, eggs. You know, if you can get free ranged, happy chickens. So eggs, turkey, seafood, beef, bison, lamb, chicken, duck, pork, you know, any wild game, you know, goat, whatever, organ meats, those are all great. And most of the carbohydrates, like we were mentioning, you want to get them from vegetables. So spinach, broccoli, kale, cauliflower, zucchini, squash, you know, bell peppers, celery, onions, herbs, those are all good. And then if you're going to go in the fruit realm, you want to be gentle, not eat all the fruit, just a little bit of fruit, but it's okay to eat some apples, some blueberries, raspberries, blackberries, peaches, grapefruit, apricots, lemons, limes, things like that. And the carbohydrates we encourage you to avoid, you know, grains, bread, pasta, sugar, candy, cookies, rice, and potatoes because they are more dense. Yeah.
Wonderful.
I don't
We
know.
get questions about people that say like, "Hey, I can't eat red meat. Can I do the keto diet?" So,
Yeah.
and that's the thing is, people should understand that you can switch out different meat sources and do different ones you like, but it's also important to get a variety of different meat sources in there as well. But you can tailor this to make it your lifestyle. You don't have to follow a certain criteria of I can only eat this meat this day, and you can find out what works for you.
Right. There's all kinds of other options, you know, fish, chicken, eggs, whatever. But yeah, you can eat all kinds. Both paleo and keto are like very flexible in terms of what proteins you eat. So that's a very good question. And then how to know when you're in ketosis. So what I notice, and what Brenda notices, is that my breath changes like big time. You
Yeah.
know, it's because there's an increase in acetone in the body, and that will come out through the breath or your urine, and it smells kind of funky, to be honest. Yeah, but Brenda's like, okay, you got it, you're there, it's okay, you know. So, but that's one way to tell. And then the weight loss is another good indication. You'll start like just trimming out immediately in the belly area. And then there's, of course, blood tests. You know, you can go on to Amazon and put in keto blood test or keto urine test, so you can test it through blood or urine. But those are things that you can do as well. Not something that I am a big fan of, but unless it's like a do or die situation, but those are options as well. So the questions often come up are, is it safe? And there's lots of different opinions on that. I'm of the opinion that as long as you stick to the principles that we're talking about here, doing a whole food approach, then you're going to be just fine. And especially like just for the first like 2 to 4 weeks, and then you can start incorporating more fruits and more carbohydrates, then you'll be just fine, and you'll be on the right track, and you'll be able to turn this into a lifestyle. And when we say lifestyle, we're talking more about kind of the more paleo approach, where you can delve into higher carbohydrate foods, but starting out to improve your ability to burn fat as fuel, it's very good to go on the low carbohydrate side. I personally don't think that it should be something for the long term. I don't think, because I believe that just as it's a problem to only burn carbohydrates as fuel, it would be the same problem if you're always burning ketones as fuel. So what I do personally is I'll just kind of I'll separate my meals. Like my dinners are more ketogenic in nature, right? They're more protein and carbohydrate with vegetables. And then after I work out, my post-workout meals will have more carbohydrates. Like I'll throw in a sweet potato, maybe a little bit more fruit after my workouts, maybe like an hour and a half after my workouts. If someone's lean, that's a good way to do it. If they're not lean, I would say still stick with mostly vegetables for all your post-workout and like dinner, breakfast meals. But once you are lean and you're able to you're just happy, you're feeling good with where you're at, then you can start incorporating the vegetables and the starches. So that's my general recommendation, is keep going with a lower carb ketogenic approach until you're where you want to be, and then start bringing the other stuff in. And then you'll be good for the long haul. That's something that's sustainable forever. People who should avoid it, the main group is women who are pregnant, right? So often with a ketogenic diet, you're eating less calories because the food is the proteins and fats are so satiating. So when you're pregnant, or you're caring for a baby, or you're nursing a baby, it's important that you are getting enough calories so you can give that to the baby. So that's the big one. The other one are really highly intense, hard charging athletes. So, if you're someone who's doing CrossFit and doing the type of workouts where when you're done doing them, you're going, and you're doing this kind of every day, that's not going to work. Like the ketogenic diet will not work for you, because what's happening there is you're doing very anaerobic activity, and that activity is dependent on glycogen for fuel. So glycogen is the storage form of glucose in the liver, right? If you're burning that out and your tank is on empty, and because you're doing the ketogenic diet and you're still trying to do those hard charging workouts, then it will not work, right? Your adrenals will start crashing. You'll start getting stress in other areas of your body. But we also got to talk about why are people doing those hard charging workouts? A lot of people think that that's what they have to do to lose weight. And I want to be very clear that that's actually a very ineffective way to lose weight. Like the best way to lose weight is what we're talking about here, first and foremost with nutrition, like lower the carbohydrates, focus on food quality, get some good fats, be consistent with protein, and then just start moving, walking every day, 30 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever's good for you. And then do a lot of the core strengthening workouts like we're talking about in the beginning, where all the muscles are working, but you're not doing those workouts going, you're getting on those workouts, you're like, I feel good. I feel awake. I feel energized. My body feels stable. I feel mobile. Like those are the kind of things you want to be doing. You don't want to be doing like, I did 100 push-ups and then went for a 5-mile run and did 50 burpees and got on the rower and I crushed it. Like that's not it. Okay. That's not it. Don't do that. That's what people do with the first 3 days of the year and they get no results. So don't do that, please, my friends. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, that's the main thing I want to say. And I mean, always, like I said, be hydrated and still focus on the quality lifestyle issues, like your sleep, managing your stress, all the things that make you happy. Make sure that you sit down, like I mentioned earlier too, like sit down, establish your values, align your actions with those values. That way you're not just being thrown around by life. You're in control. Those things are all important to your health and your happiness and all the things. So I think that's all I got. You got anything else?
I have one thing to add, because a lot of people have concerns that when they see that keto ad, they'll see bacon, they'll see butter, and then people will be like, oh, I have high cholesterol, so I can't do this diet. So that's a main question we get, that people think that if you have high cholesterol that you can't do the keto diet because of the high fats.
Yeah, and that's understandable. I mean, and so I'll also say that's another reason why I'm not liking a lot of the ads that I am seeing is because the programs behind those ads very often are just like I mentioned, a lot of fat bombs and keto cookies and keto shakes and all those things. Those things aren't good for your health. You know,
Right.
whether or not it's likely not the fats that are problem with your risk for heart disease. Is the quality of the fats and the amount of carbohydrates. And this comes back to that the belief that we have in our society that dietary fat causes our dietary cholesterol to go up, and if our dietary cholesterol goes up, our increase for heart disease goes up, right? And we want to be clear here that dietary fat is not causal to dietary cholesterol going up, and dietary cholesterol is not causal to heart disease, right? Cholesterol is something that shows up kind of like a repair mechanism, you know, like if there was a fire, you saw a bunch of firemen go into the fire, you wouldn't blame the firemen on the fire. They're just there to help out. But it's like every time there's a fire, there's firemen there, you know? So this assumption can be made that the firemen are actually causing the fire, but it's a correlate, right? So it's a thing. And so total cholesterol is not a very good indication of your risk for heart disease. It's more about your cholesterol profile. You know, there's a large puffy kind, there's a small dense kind, there's a certain ratio you want there. But there's also different tests to gauge whether or not your risk for heart disease is there, like your A1C test, for instance, is a good indication. Your triglyceride to HDL ratio is a good indication, right? So I wouldn't say do all that. Just know that your risk for heart disease largely comes from consumption of toxic fats. You know, the corn oil, safflower oil. It's really confusing sometimes because those are the things that have heart healthy on there. Because we came from a generation that had a lot of bad information. And the other big one is refined carbohydrates, you know, like especially liquid sodas, liquid juices, grains, breads, all those things, pastas. Those are all things that really spike your blood sugar levels, put you in that insulin resistant state because you have so much glucose in your bloodstream, and that contributes to the metabolic syndromes that we're having. So, yeah, the main principle is, just follow the advice we're saying. Yeah, good quality fats, moderate protein, you know, good quality carbs, lots of vegetables, then you'll be great.
Wonderful. And then we had a question pop up about, can you talk about MCT oil and the pros and cons of it?
Yeah, that's a great question. So MCT oil is what's referred to as medium chain triglyceride. It's derived from coconut. It's very beneficial for weight loss, for cognition, for energy, for mood, and things like that. It can come in powdered form or liquid form. So a lot of people it's a good thing to use in the morning. People like to put it in their coffee, like to put it in their smoothie. We actually just came out with the keto creamer, which has MCT oil and coconut oil in there, right? So it's a great, that's exactly what I'm talking about. It's like just stick to those basic fats in the morning and you'll thrive. And then, but the one thing I do notice about MCT oil is that it can be, I've seen it be kind of a digestive disruptive thing for a lot of people because it's so strong with the fats. So because it's just the most potent part of the fat in the coconut oil, right? So a lot of people, when they drink it or consume it or in any form, they'll kind of get the runs, you know, and their body will kind of get a hot flash, you know, and that's a good indication you're probably consuming a little bit too much MCT oil. That would be the only negative impact because you're kind of stressing your body in a little way, but more than that, you're not absorbing it. You're just having too much. So I would say in that case, like either eliminate it or just dial the quantity down a little bit to where you're not having those negative reactions, and it's really important that you have good quality stools and consistency. So in that case, just tamper it down a little bit, you'll be good. But it's a great fat for a lot of people, you know. Going back to the morning thing, like what I mentioned, another option if you don't do well with MCT oil, is try something like ghee and cacao powder in a tea or a mushroom tea, and those are really good.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Good. Well, we had 3 questions from last week that I gathered, but I think you covered most of them. The first one you said from Janet is, if you're promoting keto, can you interchange, which you did cover, you know, you covered it at night. And then Norma, are free keto cookbooks okay to follow?
Yeah, it just depends on what's behind those, you know. It's more the principles. I would say if you're watching this, just you know, take care of the principles. and you'll be fine. Our 30-day keto fix cookbook is awesome, so we can maybe post a link below. People can check that out. It has a 30-day meal plan. It's super easy, and even behind that, we have a really cool keto masterclass where I talk a lot about lifestyle and principles. And it's a cool like 12 series multimedia kind of thing. So that's an option too. So yeah, we'll post that, and then we can see you know how people like it. So it's great.
Well, that concludes all our questions from today.
Awesome, guys. Well, yeah. Well, if you have any questions later on, anyone watching, just let us know. Post them here. We'll be around all day to answer them. But let's do this. 2019. Let's get off to a good start.
Yes, going strong. All right.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great week.
Okay, you too. Bye-bye.
Bye.